I have worked homicide cases for over 19 years. I have stood inside rooms where unthinkable things happened. I have looked at evidence that most people will never see and carried the weight of cases that refuse to close. But the night I received the call about a 9-year-old girl named Mia Callahan, something shifted inside me in a way I had not felt in a long time. The call came in at 9:58 p.m. on a Thursday. A woman was screaming so hard she could barely form words. Her husband was in the background saying the same thing over and over. "She's not moving. She's not moving." The dispatcher stayed calm. The parents did not. When I pulled up to the house on Clearwater Lane in Cedar Falls just before 10:30, the neighborhood was already starting to stir. Porch lights flickered on. A man across the street stood in his driveway, arms folded, watching the red and blue reflections bounce off every surface. The air was cool. The house looked completely normal from the outside. A beige 2-story with a decorative wreath on the front door and a pair of small potted plants on the porch steps. That was the thing that stayed with me. Everything on the outside said ordinary, quiet, safe. But inside that house, a child was dead. And the woman who was supposed to be watching her, a soft-spoken 23-year-old named Lena Grady, was sitting at the kitchen table with dry eyes and folded hands, waiting. I stepped through that front door and immediately felt it. Something was wrong here. Not just the tragedy of it. Something deeper. Something that did not add up. That feeling never left me. Not once. Not through the entire investigation. Mia Callahan was 9 years old. She had brown eyes that her mother described as always laughing, even when her mouth wasn't. She liked drawing horses. She collected erasers shaped like food. She talked fast when she was excited and went quiet when she was nervous, which her teacher said did not happen very often because Mia was not the kind of child who stayed nervous for long. She was in 3rd grade at Cedar Falls Elementary. Her teacher, Ms. Renata Owusu, told us later that Mia was the kind of student who reminded you why you became a teacher. Not because she was perfect, she wasn't, but because she was genuinely curious. She asked questions that adults didn't always have answers to. She cared about fairness in a way most children her age couldn't even name yet. At home, she shared a room with a collection of unfinished drawings taped to the wall above her desk. Sticky notes with her own rules. Be kind first, finish what you start, were stuck to her mirror. Her nightstand held a half-built friendship bracelet, a library book 2 days overdue, and a small photograph of herself and her father at County Fair. Her parents, Nora and Grant Callahan, had been married 12 years. Grant managed a regional supply company. Nora worked part-time at a dental office and spent the rest of her time with Mia and their 7-year-old son, Felix. By every account, this was a steady, loving household, the kind that doesn't draw attention, the kind that minds its own business and expects the same in return, the kind of family that trusts. That trust, as I would come to understand, was exactly what made everything possible. Lena Grady had been babysitting Mia and Felix for a little over 7 months by the time of the incident. She came recommended through a neighbor, a woman named Patrice Odom, who lived 3 houses down from the Callahans and had used Lena twice for her own children without any problems. That recommendation was all Nora and Grant needed. Lena was 23 years old, quiet and polite. She showed up on time. She never asked to leave early. She sent updates without being asked. A text here, a photo there. She seemed genuinely like the children, and the children seemed comfortable around her. Felix, who was shy around most strangers, had warmed up to Lena within 2 visits. Nora described her to me as calm in a way that felt reassuring. Grant said she was no nonsense. Neither of them had ever had a reason to question her. She had no criminal record. She had babysat for at least 4 other families in Cedar Falls over the previous 18 months, including 2 families in the Clearwater Lane area. She drove a clean white sedan and carried a small tote bag that always had a book in it. She was not dramatic. She did not overshare. She answered questions simply and left when her shift was done. Everything about Lena Grady was designed to read as trustworthy. What no one in Cedar Falls knew, what I wouldn't know for weeks, was that in the town of Hargrove, 40 miles south, 2 families had quietly decided not to use her again. They hadn't reported anything. They hadn't called the police. They had simply chosen not to say anything at all. Thursday, October 12th. The Callahans had dinner reservations at a restaurant downtown, an anniversary dinner they had rescheduled twice already because life kept getting in the way. Nora told me she almost canceled again. Work had been hard that week. She was tired. Grant talked her into it. Just 2 hours, he said. We'll be back before 10. Lena arrived at 6:30 p.m. Grant answered the door. Mia was already in her pajamas, sketchbook under her arm. Felix was finishing dinner at the kitchen table. Everything was normal. Everything was calm. Nora gave Lena the usual rundown. Felix should be in bed by 8. Mia could stay up until 8:30. There were snacks on the second shelf of the fridge. The emergency numbers were on the whiteboard near the microwave. She said Lena nodded through all of it in the patient, familiar way she always did. Like someone who had heard it before and didn't need reminding, but wasn't going to make anyone feel foolish for saying it. They left at 6:42 p.m. Nora told me she almost turned around on the highway. Something felt slightly off, but she couldn't name it. She pushed the feeling away. She had felt that way before. The low hum of parental worry that shows up whenever you leave your children with someone who isn't you. It didn't mean anything, she told herself. She was still blaming herself for pushing that feeling away when I interviewed her 6 days later. She sat across from me in a small room at the station with her hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee that had gone cold, and she kept saying the same words. I almost turned around. I didn't know how to tell her it wouldn't have changed what had already been set in motion. The first text came at 8:14 p.m. It was from Lena to Nora's phone. She's asleep already. At the time, Nora read it as reassurance. She showed Grant across the dinner table and smiled. Mia had a habit of falling asleep early when she was tired. She had been up late the night before finishing a drawing, and so the message seemed completely believable. What Nora did not know was that at 8:14 p.m., the light in Mia's room was still on. We confirmed this through the home's smart lighting system, which logged every light activation and deactivation by room. According to those records, the light in Mia's bedroom was turned on at 7:51 p.m. and did not go off until 9:04 p.m., nearly an hour after Lena sent that text. So either Mia was awake and Lena lied about it, or was someone else turned that light on and off. There was no one else in the house. What troubled me even more was the nature of the lie itself. It was small. It was easy. It was the kind of lie that asked for nothing in return. No response needed, no follow-up required. Just a simple message designed to stop anyone from checking. In my experience, people don't lie without reason. And the smaller the lie, the more carefully it was chosen. I pulled Lena's phone records that week. Between 6:42 p.m., when the Callahans left, and 9:52 p.m., when they returned, Lena sent that one text to Nora and made 0 calls. She did, however, spend significant portions of the evening active on social media. Not once, according to any digital record, did she check on either child after 7:30 p.m. At 8:37 p.m., the home security camera at the top of the staircase, which faced toward both the children's rooms and the master bedroom, went offline. The system log recorded it as an unexpected disconnection. When the system reconnected at 9:40 p.m., everything appeared normal. The cameras picked up nothing unusual. The hallway was quiet. The lights downstairs were on. Lena could be seen on the living room sofa, scrolling through her phone. 63 minutes of footage was simply gone. The security company told us it could have been a router glitch, an accidental disconnection, or deliberate interference. Without more evidence at the time, we couldn't say which. What we could say was this: something happened in that house during those 63 minutes. And by the time the cameras came back online, whatever it was had already ended. I sat with that gap for a long time. It is the kind of detail that sounds technical in a report, but feels enormous when you're sitting in the house where it happened. 63 minutes is a long time. It is long enough to do many things. Long enough to act. Long enough to cover something up. And it is long enough for a 9-year-old girl who was alive at 8 p.m. to be dead before 10 p.m., with no recording of what happened in between. The gap in the footage did not prove anything on its own. Cameras glitch. Routers fail. I knew that. But I also knew that the timing was exact. And in this work, exact timing is rarely an accident. Across the street, A retired nurse named Vivian Hartley had been sitting in her front window that evening the way she often did, drinking herbal tea, watching the neighborhood settle into the dark. She had lived on Clearwater Lane for 11 years and knew most of her neighbors well enough to notice when something fell out of place. At some point between 8:30 and 9, she saw a light in the Callahan house go off upstairs. She didn't think much of it at first. Children go to bed. Lights go off. That was normal. What wasn't normal was what she noticed afterward. Lena Grady was standing in the kitchen, visible through the large front window, with the overhead light off. She was just standing there, not moving, not on her phone, not preparing anything, just standing in the dark kitchen, staring out the window toward the street. Vivian told me she watched for what felt like 2 or 3 minutes. Lena didn't move, didn't shift her weight, didn't reach for anything. It gave me a cold feeling, Vivian said, like she was waiting for something, or thinking very hard about something she'd already done. Vivian considered going to the door. She thought about knocking, asking if everything was all right. Instead, she went back to her tea and told herself she was reading too much into it. It is the most common thing I hear in this work. Instincts appear, people dismiss them, then something happens, and the instincts come back as guilt. Vivian Hartley cried when she told me this. She kept saying she should have crossed the street. I believed her. I also believed it wouldn't have changed the outcome. Nora and Grant pulled into the driveway at 9:52 p.m. The house looked peaceful, living room light on, no sound from upstairs. Everything is expected. Grant paid Lena while Nora went inside first. She climbed the stairs quietly, not wanting to wake the kids. Felix was asleep in his room. She smiled, adjusted his blanket, and moved down the hall to Mia's door. It was slightly open. She pushed it wider and stepped inside. Mia was on her back, blankets pulled up to her chin, arms at her sides. The room smelled faintly of something Nora couldn't place immediately. Her first thought was that the blankets looked strange, too neat, too precisely arranged, not the jumbled mess Mia usually kicked up around herself when she slept. She leaned over and said her daughter's name. No movement. She said it again, louder. Nothing. She touched Mia's shoulder, then her face. Cold. What happened next is something I have replayed in my mind many times because of how quickly it moved. Nora's scream reached Grant before he had finished paying Lena. He was through the front door and up the stairs in seconds. Lena, according to Grant, moved toward the kitchen and stayed there. She did not come upstairs. She did not ask what was wrong. She stood near the kitchen counter and waited. When I ask myself what a person does when they hear a child's mother scream like that, the answer is simple. They run toward the scream. They don't know what happened. They go. Lena already knew. The first officers arrived at 10:07 p.m. Paramedics followed 4 minutes later. I arrived at 10:28 p.m. and was briefed at the door by Officer Darrentate, who had secured the scene and kept Lena and the parents separated in different areas of the house. Mia had been pronounced dead at the scene. The paramedics noted that her body temperature indicated she had been deceased for more than an hour, possibly closer to 90 minutes, before Nora found her. That put the time of death somewhere between 8 o'clock and 8:30 p.m. There were no visible signs of physical trauma at first observation. No blood, no bruising visible on the arms or face. Nothing that immediately suggested violence. That would change after the medical examiner's full review. But at that moment, in that room, the cause was not obvious. Mia's sketchbook was on the floor near the bed, open to an unfinished drawing. A horse, mid-gallop, with only the front half completed. The back half waited in blank space where she hadn't gotten to it yet. The room was too tidy. That was the first thing I noted in my log. Not messy the way a child's room looks after a normal evening of drawing and cartoons. Tidy in a deliberate way. Surfaces cleared, objects straightened, as if someone had moved through the space and put things back. But not exactly right. You can tell when a room has been cleaned by someone who doesn't know where things belong. There's a flatness to it, an absence of the natural clutter that fills a space when a child actually lives in it. Someone had been in this room after Mia stopped being able to object. I spoke to Lena Grady for the first time at 11:14 p.m. She was seated at the kitchen table with a glass of water in front of her that she hadn't touched. She was composed. Her hands were folded. Her voice, when she spoke, was level and measured. I have interviewed hundreds of people in the aftermath of sudden death. Shock looks many ways. Some people can't stop shaking, some go silent, some talk too much to fill the space where grief hasn't landed yet. Composure is not suspicious on its own, but Lena's composure had a specific quality I noticed immediately. It was not the stillness of someone frozen by shock. It was the stillness of someone managing something. Like a person who has prepared for a conversation and is making sure they stay on the lines they rehearsed. I asked her to walk me through the evening. She did, beginning with the Callahans leaving, moving through dinner for the kids, cartoons, bedtime, the text she sent to Nora, and then sitting on the sofa until they came back. Every detail was clean. Every pause was measured. She used the same phrases in the same order when I asked her to repeat certain sections. That is the thing about a rehearsed story. It doesn't shift. Real memory is imperfect. Real accounts circle back, add details, correct themselves. They breathe. Lena's story didn't breathe. When I asked her why she hadn't gone upstairs after Nora screamed, she paused. Not the pause of surprise, the pause of a person choosing words. I didn't know what was happening, she said. She looked me directly in the eye when she said it. That, too, felt practiced. The medical examiner's preliminary report came back 48 hours later. It changed everything I thought I was looking at. Mia Callahan had not been struck. She had not been strangled in any conventional sense. There were no ligature marks, no major blunt force trauma, no signs of physical struggle. What the examiner found instead was more complicated and in some ways more chilling. Mia had been suffocated. The evidence was subtle. Petechial hemorrhaging in the eyes, very slight bruising along the cheekbones consistent with pressure being applied to the face, and lividity patterns indicating she had not moved after death. The position of her body, when found, was the position she had died in. The examiner estimated that death occurred within a window consistent with the security camera outage, between 8:20 and 8:50 p.m. That gap in the footage was no longer just suspicious. It now lined up almost perfectly with when Mia died. What struck me about the nature of the death was the patience it required. This was not a sudden, panicked act. Suffocation, particularly the kind that leaves almost no external marks, takes time and deliberate pressure. It requires someone to commit to the act completely and see it through. It is not a crime of impulse. That told me something important about who did this. This was not panic. This was not an accident covered up. This was a choice. A calculated, sustained choice made in the dark of a child's bedroom, while a 7-year-old slept down the hall and an anniversary dinner was being enjoyed across town. The question I kept returning to was simple and terrible. Why? We began pulling Lena's history the same week. What we found was not dramatic, not at first. No criminal record, no red flags in any law enforcement database. She had grown up in Hargrove, 40 miles south of Cedar Falls, and had moved north about 2 years earlier. She had held 3 jobs since moving: a retail position, a short stint at a daycare, and then private babysitting. The daycare job ended after 7 months. We contacted the facility director, a woman named Constance Wade, who told us that Lena had been let go due to behavioral concerns with the children. Constance was careful with her words. She said there had been complaints from 2 parents about their children seeming off after spending extended time with Lena. Trouble sleeping, unexplained fear, clinginess. Nothing formal had been reported. We didn't want to ruin her career over something we couldn't prove, Constance told me. That phrase, couldn't prove, sat in my chest like a stone. In Hargrove, we located 2 families who had used Lena as a private babysitter in the 18 months before she moved to Cedar Falls. Both families had stopped using her. Neither family had reported anything to police. One mother told us her daughter, who was 6 at the time, had started having nightmares after 3 sessions with Lena. The nightmares stopped when they stopped using her. We thought it was just a phase, the mother said. She seemed so normal. The other family wouldn't go on record. They had a simple, flat answer when we called. They didn't want to get involved. Nobody reported. Nobody warned anyone. And so Lena Grady moved 40 miles north and started again with a clean sheet. I need to stop here and talk about something that doesn't make it into police reports. It makes it into conversations late at night with other investigators, the ones who have worked enough cases to understand that evil rarely announces itself. Lena Grady did not look like a threat. She looked like exactly what she presented herself to be, a quiet young woman who was good with children, reliable, and easy to have around. People made assumptions about her based on what they could see, and what they could see was designed to be reassuring. This is something behavioral analysts call a mask of competence. It is not unique to any gender or age group. It simply describes the way some people construct a version of themselves specifically engineered to disarm suspicion. The softness of voice, the calm of manner, the particular way of saying "of course" and "no problem" that makes people feel like you are exactly where you were supposed to be. Lena had that mask down perfectly. What behavioral analysts also note is that people who wear that mask in high-functioning ways tend to do so because something underneath it is fundamentally disconnected, not broken in any visible sense, not raging or unstable, just absent, a hollow where empathy is supposed to live. Lena had never shown anger around the family she worked for. She had never been cruel in any way anyone witnessed. She was not a monster in the way most people picture a monster. She was simply a person who looked at a 9-year-old child and made a decision that most human beings, no matter how dark their thoughts, would never allow themselves to execute. The why was still unclear, but the who was becoming harder and harder to argue with. 2 weeks into the investigation, we obtained a full forensic analysis of Lena's phone. The data told a story that her verbal account had not. Between 6:42 p.m. and 9:52 p.m. on October 12th, Lena had been highly active on her phone. Social media browsing, scrolling, a messaging application, and 2 searches conducted through a web browser. The searches were made at 7:44 p.m. and 7:58 p.m., both within the hour before the security camera went offline. The nature of those searches I am not able to fully detail here, as this is an active case. What I can say is that they were inconsistent with the behavior of a person simply passing time while children watch cartoons. They pointed toward a specific, planned line of thinking. What also stood out was the gap in activity. Lena's phone showed almost no activity between 8:17 p.m. and 9:39 p.m., an 82-minute window. Before and after that window, her phone was in near constant use. The camera outage ran from 8:37 to 9:40 p.m. That overlap, phone goes quiet, camera goes offline, child dies, was not something I could attribute to coincidence. We also found deleted messages. The forensic recovery team pulled fragments of a thread between Lena and an unknown number that had been removed from the device. Most of the messages were unrecoverable, but one fragment remained. 3 words broken across 2 lines. Incomplete in meaning, but complete in implication. The fragment read, "When they're gone." I stared at those words for a long time. They changed everything about how I understood this case. We identified the unknown number from the deleted message thread. It traced back to a prepaid phone purchased with cash at a convenience store in Hargrove 3 months before the incident. The phone had been used sporadically and was no longer active. We could not determine who purchased it. That detail, a cash-bought burner phone in Lena's hometown, opened a line of inquiry we had not fully considered before. Was there someone else involved? Had this been discussed with another person? Was Lena the actor, the planner, or both? I spent several days working that thread before arriving at a conclusion I was not fully comfortable with. We might never know who was on the other end of that phone. What we did determine was that Lena had been in Hargrove twice in the 8 weeks leading up to October 12th. We found this through her car's GPS history, which her vehicle's onboard system had logged without her apparently realizing it. Both trips were brief, a few hours each, and both were made on weekdays when she had no scheduled work commitments. Neither trip could be tied to any known address or location with certainty. What this told me was that Lena's world was larger and more active than the quiet, contained image she projected. She had a life that the families of Cedar Falls knew nothing about. Trips she didn't mention, contacts she didn't discuss, a phone number she communicated with and then tried to erase. Most people, when they babysit, think about the children in their care. They think about snacks and bedtimes and cartoon channels. Lena had been thinking about something else entirely. I brought Lena in for a second formal interview 22 days after the incident. By then, we had the phone data, the forensic report, the testimony from the Hargrove families, and the security gap analysis. We had enough to challenge her account directly. She arrived with an attorney. I expected that. I did not let it change my approach. The interview lasted 2 hours and 17 minutes. For the first 40 minutes, she repeated the same account she had given the night of the incident. Same words, same pauses, same flat delivery. Then I introduced the phone records, the activity gaps, the timing of the camera outage. Something shifted in her face. Not much. A small tightening around the eyes. A fractional change in the angle of her jaw. People who study microexpressions would have named it. I have just seen enough interviews to recognize when someone's internal calculation is changing. She did not break. She was too controlled for that. But she stopped repeating her original account and began saying something different. I don't remember. 3 times in the second hour, she said, I don't remember that part. That is a different statement from a denial. A denial says it didn't happen. I don't remember keeps the door open. It gives the speaker an exit while leaving the facts standing where they are. Her attorney called a break at the 90-minute mark. When they returned, Lena's posture had changed. She sat differently, less forward, less precise. She still gave us nothing we could take directly to a charging document. But the composed, rehearsed surface had developed its first visible crack. I walked out of that interview knowing we were close. It was Grant Callahan who gave us the piece we needed, though he didn't know it at the time. 3 weeks after the incident, he was going through Mia's room. Not to change anything, just to sit with it, he told me. To be near the things that had been hers. He was pulling a chair out from her desk when the corner of it caught the edge of something tucked flat against the wall beneath the baseboard. It was a folded piece of paper. On it, in Mia's handwriting, was a short and simple sentence. Lena scares me sometimes. Below that, in the careful printing of a child who is still learning to express difficult things. She looks at me weird when Mom and Dad aren't here. Like she doesn't like me. Grant called me immediately. He was barely able to speak. That piece of paper was not evidence of a crime on its own. A child's note does not establish guilt. But it told us something important. That Mia had noticed something. That she had felt something real enough to write down and hide. Children don't write things like that, and hide them unless part of them knows the note needs to be kept out of sight. It also told me something harder. Mia had been afraid of Lena. Not once, not recently. The note had the soft crinkle of something written and folded a while back. She had been afraid for some time, and she had said nothing to her parents because she was 9 years old, and 9-year-olds often believe they are wrong about the adults in their lives. She had been right. She had just had no way to know what that would cost her. The medical examiner's final report confirmed what the preliminary had suggested and added one additional finding that we had not anticipated. There were trace fibers recovered from Mia's face and neck, specifically from the petechial area consistent with the suffocation method. The fibers matched the composition of a fabric found on a throw pillow recovered from the living room sofa, a pillow that Lena had been photographed sitting beside in the home's security footage earlier in the evening. That pillow had been moved. When the first officers arrived, the pillow was on the sofa where it belonged. But the original security footage, the portion before the camera outage, showed it resting at a different angle on the far end of the sofa closest to the stairs. Someone had moved it. We couldn't say for certain when, but the fiber match was direct. The pillow that carried fibers matching those found on Mia's face was the same pillow Lena had been sitting against for much of the evening. The same pillow that had been repositioned before the police arrived. I will not claim that a moved pillow and some fabric fibers close a case. They don't on their own, but placed alongside everything else, the timeline, the phone data, the camera gap, the deleted messages, the testimony from Hargrove, and Mia's hidden note, a picture was coming together with a clarity that is rare in this work. This was not chaos. This was not accident. This was a series of deliberate actions taken by someone who had thought about this and prepared. Someone who had moved through that house that night with a specific purpose and a specific plan to walk out of it looking like the person who hadn't done anything. Lena Grady was arrested on the 31st day after Mia Callahan's death. The arrest came at 7:15 a.m. at her apartment, a one-bedroom unit in the east side of Cedar Falls. She did not resist. She did not speak. She walked to the patrol car and got inside with the same measured composure she had displayed throughout every interaction I had with her. I was not there for the arrest. I watched it on the body camera footage later that day. Even in that moment, hands cuffed behind her, a uniform on each side, the morning light pale and flat against her building's front walk, she looked like someone running a program. Eyes forward, jaw set, processing something internal. The charges filed that morning were first-degree murder. The news moved through Cedar Falls like a current. By noon, it was across regional outlets. By evening, it was national. The response from the community was what I had expected, and also what always catches me off guard when I see it. A combination of rage, disbelief, and the particular grief of people who trusted something and had that trust used against them. Parents pulled their children from after-school activities. Neighborhood groups formed online. People who had never spoken to the Callahans reached out with cards and donations. Nora and Grant issued a short statement through their attorney that afternoon. It said very little, just that they were grateful for the work of law enforcement and that Mia had been loved beyond measure. I read that statement twice. Then I went back to my desk and kept working. Arrest is not the end. It is the beginning of a different kind of accountability. And in cases like this one, accountability matters more than closure. Closure is a word for people who haven't lost what the Callahans lost. In the weeks between the arrest and the beginning of trial proceedings, I spent a lot of time thinking about the families in Hargrove, the ones who noticed something and said nothing. I do not say this to assign blame to them. I understand why people stay quiet. They don't want to destroy someone's livelihood over a feeling. They don't want to be wrong. They don't want to get involved in something that might spiral in directions they can't control. What I kept returning to was the gap. The space between I noticed something and I reported it. That space is where the system fails. Not because it is broken necessarily, but because it is invisible. There is no national database of babysitter complaints. There is no mechanism by which a family in Hargrove shares a concern that reaches a family 40 miles north in Cedar Falls. Unless something is formally reported, nothing is formally recorded. Unless something is formally recorded, nothing is formally shared. I asked Constance Wade, the daycare director who had let Lena go without filing a report, whether she would do anything differently now. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I thought I was being fair to her. I thought giving her a quiet exit was kinder than putting something on paper." That is a human response. It is also the exact response that creates the gap. Kindness to the wrong person in the wrong context at the wrong time is a choice with consequences that extend far beyond the moment of that choice. This is not easy to hear. It is also true. I don't believe Constance Wade bears legal responsibility for what happened to Mia Callahan. But I believe the system she worked within, the silent nod, the quiet departure, the warning that never got written down, made it easier for Lena Grady to keep going. The trial began the following spring, 8 months after Mia's death. I testified on the 4th day. The defense argued that the evidence, while circumstantial in many respects, was insufficient to establish guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. They challenged the fiber analysis, raised questions about the security camera outage, and suggested the timeline could be interpreted multiple ways. These are the arguments that defense attorneys are supposed to make. That is how the system works. I did not take it personally. What I did take seriously was the jury's responsibility in hearing it. 12 people sitting in a courtroom tasked with looking at a mosaic of evidence. Digital records, forensic findings, witness accounts, a child's handwritten note, a 3-word fragment recovered from a deleted phone thread, and deciding whether that mosaic added up to something certain enough to call justice. I gave my testimony over 4 hours. I walked through every piece of evidence methodically. The fiber match, the phone records, the camera outage timeline, the Hargrove testimony, Mia's note. I did not editorialize. I did not reach. I presented what the evidence showed and let it stand on its own. The prosecution also called Vivian Hartley, who described what she saw through the window that night. Lena standing still in the dark kitchen, not moving, not reacting, just waiting. The jury watched her carefully when she said it. They also called Grant Callahan, who held Mia's note in his hands and read it aloud in a courtroom so quiet that the air conditioning seemed too loud. He read it in a voice that barely held together, and when he finished, the room stayed silent for a moment that felt much longer than it was. Some evidence doesn't need a legal explanation. It just needs to be heard. The jury deliberated for 2 days. On the second afternoon, they returned with a verdict, guilty of first-degree murder. I was in the courthouse when the verdict came down. I was not in the courtroom. I'd already given my testimony and had no reason to stay. I heard about it through a call from the lead prosecutor, a woman named Adiz Obi who had worked the case alongside me from the beginning. Her voice was steady when she called, professional, but there was something underneath it, a particular kind of exhale that comes after you have been carrying something heavy for a very long time and someone has finally helped you set it down. Lena Grady showed no visible emotion when the verdict was read. Witnesses in the courtroom described her as still, the same stillness she had displayed all along. Her attorney immediately indicated plans to appeal. Mia Callahan was present in the courtroom. She did not speak to media afterward. A friend who was with her told me later that when the verdict was announced, Mia simply lowered her head and didn't move for a long moment. Not relief. Not triumph, just the quiet, exhausted acknowledgement that something true had finally been officially recognized. Grant was not in the courtroom. He had stayed home with Felix, who was now 8 years old and navigating a world that had fundamentally changed for him without his full understanding of why. Felix still asked questions about Mia, still set a place for her at the table sometimes, still left the light on in the hallway at night. Children carry grief differently than adults. It lives in the small, specific things. The light left on, the place at the table, the habit of expecting someone who doesn't come. Lena Grady was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. On the day of sentencing, the judge allowed Mia Callahan to make a victim impact statement. I had not read it ahead of time. I was in the courtroom that day, and I sat in the back row and listened. Mia spoke for about 12 minutes. She did not talk about Lena directly. She talked about Mia. She talked about the morning of October 12th, how Mia had eaten cereal that morning and asked if she could have a dog someday, and made her mother promise to come to the school recital next month. She talked about how a child's world is made almost entirely of trust. Trust that adults will protect them, trust that the people closest to them have their best interests at the center of every decision. She trusted us, Mia said, and we trusted someone who had no right to that trust. We didn't know that. We couldn't have known. But Mia paid for it, and I will live with that every day for the rest of my life. The courtroom stayed very quiet. I have sat through dozens of victim impact statements over my career. Some of them move me, and some of them don't, depending on the case, depending on the moment, depending on where I am emotionally when I walk through those courthouse doors. This one reached me in a way I hadn't expected, not because of what it said about the crime, but because of what it said about ordinary trust, the kind that parents extend without thinking, the kind that a 9-year-old child has no reason to question, the kind that most of us rely on just to get through a normal day. That kind of trust does not belong in a courtroom. After the sentencing, I did something I rarely do. I went back to Clearwater Lane and sat in my car outside the Callahan house for a few minutes. I don't know exactly what I was looking for. The neighborhood looked the same as it had that first night. Quiet houses, porch lights, a few cars and driveways. The decorative wreath was still on the Callahan's front door, though it had been changed from the autumn one that had been there in October to a simpler, neutral one. The potted plants were still on the steps. It looked like a house where people still lived, where someone still came home at the end of the day and unlocked the door and turned on the lights and made dinner and put children to bed. That was true. It was still true. A family still lived there. But it was not the same family that had lived there on October 11th, the day before. That family was gone in a way that had nothing to do with address or keys or furniture. Something irreplaceable had been taken from those walls, and no legal verdict, no sentence, no amount of community support could put it back. What I thought about, sitting there in my car, was the systems around this case, the unreported concerns in Hargrove, the daycare that let someone go without writing anything down, the two families who saw children acting strangely and told themselves it was probably nothing. None of those people did what they did out of malice. They did it out of uncertainty, out of a desire not to cause trouble, out of the deeply human instinct to hope that the uncomfortable thing you noticed was not as serious as it felt. Those instincts are understandable. They're also sometimes the last door between something preventable and something permanent. Mia Callahan deserved better from every system that touched her life. I have told this story many times now, in reports, in testimony, in conversation with other investigators who work these cases and understand what they cost. Every time I tell it, I come back to the same point, and I think it is the most important one. This case did not begin the night Mia died. It began in all the quiet moments before. Every instinct dismissed, every concern left unspoken, every warning that existed only in someone's memory and never made it to a piece of paper. The little girl who asked too fast when she was excited and bit her lip when she was nervous and hid a note under her baseboard because she sensed something her mother didn't know to look for. She was not failed by one person. She was failed by a series of small, human-sized failures that stacked up invisibly until they became something no one could undo. I am not telling you this story to frighten you. I am telling it because the truth of what happened to Mia Callahan is the kind of truth that deserves to be known. Not for shock, not for entertainment, because the things that protect children, real attention, real reporting, real honesty when something feels wrong, only work when people choose them. When someone chooses to make the call, write the report, say the difficult thing instead of the comfortable one. Mia's drawing is still unfinished. The horse will never be completed, but the story of what happened to her can be completed, not with a sentence or a verdict, but with the choice that every person watching this makes going forward. To trust instincts, to say something, to not let the discomfort of being wrong override the responsibility of being honest. That is what Mia deserved. That is what every child deserves. If this story moved you, please like this video, subscribe to True Crime Files Gist, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. At True Crime Files Gist, we use every resource available to bring you thoroughly researched, deeply reported crime stories that inform, resonate, and refuse to let important truths be forgotten. Because sometimes, the only thing standing between a warning and a tragedy is someone who chose to speak up. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Thank you for watching, and thank you for caring enough to stay until the end.